OK, that's it. We are back in an hour's time. See you then. Bye-bye.
Good morning to you. You're watching Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Munchetti.
Time now is 7:31. Let's go back to our top story this morning. The news: the Liberal Democrats have won.
Minister Kit Malthouse, who joins us now from North London. Good morning to you. Is it a good morning? You lost a seat that you've always held. The Conservatives have always held. What went wrong?
No, I can't pretend now that it's anything other than crushingly disappointing, particularly for our great candidate, Peter Fleet. I was there myself a couple of days ago, knocking on doors, and it does come as quite a surprise. There'll obviously have to be a big post-match analysis.
Half hour of the show.
It's now 17 minutes to 8. Rape victims in England and Wales have been failed. The government has acknowledged that, with record convictions at a record low in recent years and accusations that rape has effectively been decriminalised. There are new plans being set out today, including putting the emphasis on the suspect's behaviour and reducing the time that complainants have their phones taken away to gather evidence. We'll be hearing from the policing minister in a moment. But first, the story of one victim's experience in August 2018. Sarah chose to waive her anonymity to speak to us.
It was a very hot summer's evening. I'd gone out for a meal and had a few alcoholic drinks, and decided after the meal that I'd quite like to go into town. So I went into town on my own, went to a pub there, had some more beers, stayed at the pub until closing, and then left with the intention of walking down the road to get a taxi back home. After leaving the pub, I don't have much memory. I do know I was raped and assaulted. I remember certain feelings. I remember mud and sticks on the ground. I remember the pain. I remember telling this man, who's a stranger, no, I do not want that. I remember suddenly becoming aware that I've got no clothes on. And that really scared me.
You called a friend, didn't you? And that was how it was reported to the police, who it seems did respond fairly swiftly.
They did, yes. I can't fault the actions of the police at all. They were absolutely brilliant throughout the whole process.
The police passed the case to the CPS. And then what happened? You knew that the suspect had entered a not guilty plea. You thought it was going to go to trial. And then?
Everything seemed to be progressing fine. The police officer on many occasions stated that this was the strongest case that he'd had evidentially. It's a big thing. They requested everything for download of my phone, medical records, but it was the support of my sexual violence advisor and the police's confidence in the case that kept me going with it.
But when it came to it, the CPS went to court and offered no evidence, which meant that the judge had to find the suspect not guilty.
Yes, this, to me, came completely out of the blue, and to the police as well. The police tried to argue with the CPS, but they couldn't get anywhere. It couldn't be changed.
And they said that the reason was that when they looked at the CCTV footage, their reading of it was that you were walking hand in hand, which is why they had it in their mind that perhaps you'd consented.
They had many interpretations of the CCTV footage, which at this point I hadn't seen, so it was very difficult to go against what they're saying. I had a meeting with the CPS after they dropped the case, which was absolutely horrendous. It was victim blaming, it was discrediting me, it was rape myths. I was asked, why didn't I run away? And was it sensible for me to get drunk on my own? When they said it could be that I could have consented, I think their phrase was sex with regret. And I explained my sexuality. I'm gay. I don't have a history of being with men. They said that my sexuality was irrelevant and that when drunk, people can do anything.
And when you did look at the same CCTV, what did you see? What was your interpretation of you and the man?
I could not believe what I was seeing. I found out that there was a further attempted assault that is on the CCTV that I wasn't even aware of.
Of you?
Yes.
Right. So you weren't walking hand in hand I mean, that wasn't how it looked to you.
No, the hand in hand was, it looked as though I was being pulled. I was unable to stand up straight. So this man was trying to support me, keep me standing up.
To keep you moving along.
Yes.
How does all of this leave you feeling, Sarah? I mean, you never got justice then for what happened to you. Is this the kind of thing that, you know, when other people hear about it, would contribute to putting people off reporting?
I think so, yes. I mean, it's got to the stage with me that I've completely lost all faith in our criminal justice system with regard to rape and sexual assault cases. There has been significant media coverage of high-profile sexual violence cases along with the Me Too movement. This, I think, encouraged more people to come forward to report rapes and sexual assaults, feeling confident that they'd be believed and supported and that justice would be served. However, now, if somebody approached me and asked my advice, unfortunately, I would say to them, do not report, because the chance of a successful conviction is minuscule at the moment, but there is an extremely high chance of you being further traumatised.
Sarah, thank you very much. Well, the CPS have told us that they've listened closely to victims who feel they've been let down by the criminal justice system and that they are focused on asking the right questions about consent and the behaviour of suspects. Listening to Sarah's story, and live with us now is Kit Malthouse, the Minister for Crime and Policing. Good morning.
Morning.
How would Sarah's experience be different under the plans that are set out in the Rape Review published today?
Well, obviously very sorry to hear her experience. And sadly, it's a story that we've heard too often over the last few years, and it's one that we're determined to correct. So what I would hope is that as part of the changes that we're going to be bringing in, that first of all, the police and the CPS would be working much more closely together at the start of a case to make sure that the sort of evidence that was being put together was appropriate. Secondly, that the intrusion into her privacy through the mobile phone was minimised. It's obviously necessary as part of a case, but be minimised, and the disclosure would be proportionate. Thirdly, that she would receive all the support she needs to get to court, and I'm pleased that she had an independent sexual violence advisor. We're expanding those by 700, a 40% increase to make sure victims have support. And finally, that if the decision was taken not to charge, that there would be what we're calling an NFA, no further action challenge panel in the area, which not only took into account what was happening, but challenged the police and the CPS as to why they were not proceeding with the case, and was able to help them learn about why they should. On top of that, also, there is, of course, don't forget, victims' right of review in these circumstances. And I would hope that she'd make use of that. And when the new victims law comes in later on this year, we'll be putting many more victims' rights into law on which she could rely. So I'm hopeful there'll be a big improvement. But again, it's a very sad story, and I'm very sorry to hear it.
The phone point is a really important one, because often people have their phones taken away. It can be for even more than a year. And part of what's in the Rape Review is an aim to have those returned by police within 24 hours. Does that mean their own phone, or does it mean just they get given a phone and their phone is hung on to?
No, their own phone. If there is circumstances where it's needed for longer, or indeed during the 24 hours that they need a phone, I would like to think that we'd replace it or have some kind of phone that they could use. I mean, one of the challenges in modern crime fighting, Michelle, over the last few years has been the advent of the smartphone. And, you know, there isn't a murder, for example, in the country that isn't solved with mobile phone data of some kind. And yet our ability to interrogate and to download that has been slow to catch up. Now, there is software out there which is allowing us now even to download off a phone at the scene of a crime, which should speed things up.
Yeah,
and that's why we're able to have
absolutely, and that would be a major difference, wouldn't it? Something that can take up, you know, more than a year to change that to 24 hours. But are you...
I think that we'd replace it or have some kind of phone that they could use. I mean, one of the challenges in modern crime fighting, Michelle, over the last few years has been the advent of the smartphone. And, there isn't a murder, for example, in the country that isn't solved with mobile phone data of some kind. And yet our ability to interrogate and to download that has been slow to catch up. Now,
than a year to change that to 24 hours. But you're saying there are some circumstances where that couldn't happen, but could you say the vast majority of phones would be returned to complainants within 24 hours?
That's our plan, yes.
And you think it's doable?
I do.
Do you acknowledge that cuts to, the CPS in particular, really, that was certainly where Sarah's problems really, really lay, because she didn't have a problem with the way the police handled her case. Do you accept that cuts to the CPS have been part of the reason that for some of these problems?
No, I don't.
You don't? Because Robert Buckland, when he was speaking to the BBC yesterday, did acknowledge that budget cuts have been part of the problem here. Well,
in truth, the biggest drop we saw in cases coming to court arose from 2016. And obviously that was partway through a period of financial hardship in the country when we were trying to cut our cloth accordingly. And so the reasons for that fall are more complex, I think, necessarily than just budget cuts. But look, has the CPS been under strain generally? Yes. Has the whole public service been under strain? Of course it is.
But the CPS in particular, 25% budget cut, 30% reduction in staff. That means that compared to 2010, when the Conservatives came to power, when there were 8,000 staff, by 2018 it had about 5,500. That kind of thing is going to make a difference, isn't it, with how much time they can give to something like really thinking about what CCTV footage shows?
Well, as I say, what we're finding is that during the period that we're talking about, the number of reported cases has obviously almost doubled. We've gone from just over 20,000 to 40-odd thousand during that period. And the number of cases that the police are putting forward to the CPS continues to rise. But there are decisions being made both by the police and the CPS on a daily basis about these numbers. Now, our primary target is obviously to get us back to the period 2016. As a sort of base camp. And I do think within the capacity that we've got, we will be able to do that.
OK, let's talk about the Chesham and Amersham by-election now that result is in. The Lib Dems obviously absolutely delighted. Why do you think you lost a seat?
No, and that's why I'm saying to you, it's a complex set of drivers here electorally. We're seeing a change in British politics. We need to understand that. What did the Liberal...
And now perhaps the blue wall is at stake.
Well, I don't think so. We're a one nation party, right? We believe there is no...
example, in these home county seats, something like your planning reforms are very unpopular.
Well, that depends. I mean, I was housing minister for a year and I spent a lot of time touring people, particularly people who see young, people in their 20s and 30s still living at home, recognise the need for more housing. The question is where and what it looks like. And those are the debates that we'll have. But as I say, across the whole of the country. So I say that the message that's coming through is a little more complicated and will take some time to analyse. But look, I'm pretty confident at the next election that we'll do our best to win back Chesham and Amersham.
Kit Malthouse, thank you.
There'll be a decision made on that.
No, whether the discussions are ongoing. As I said to you, Nago, what we're trying to do, please understand, what we're trying to do is be agile in the face of a fast-moving virus. Right? You will have seen, we're in a delayed period of release from restrictions because of the path of the virus. Now, as the tournament continues, we're obviously keeping an eye on the tournament, making sure that goes well and keeping an eye on the virus at the same time. And that means we need to stay in close touch with UEFA, constant conversations about the path of both of those things to make sure that we enable as much of the tournament to proceed in as happy and cheerful and uninfected a way as we possibly can. And I know that's what DCMS are doing.
Kit Malthouse, Minister for Crime and Policing, thank you very much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you.
Let's see, time now is 7:42. More of the football, of course. Mike's at Wembley for it.
About these very high levels of pollen. And so many of you will be sitting, watching us, itchy eyes, runny nose. You too, bye. Also, winning because he had what seemed like a clean shirt and T-shirt on.
Yes.
Do some of those are the little victories.
He made an effort for us.
Headlines coming up.
Hemingway was a writer. His starts Tuesday the 29th of June on BBC4 and iPlayer.